sure that that would be better because we now have walls all around this property.
Okay.
And the intent of having some of those drives drop down was to prevent some or provide some like eyes on the street because we have that park back there.
Yeah.
So I'd be hesitant to say that they could do wall perimeter all the way around. But in what's being presented tonight, I think that's something that we could say is as good as or better because that street system provides that ability.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eric.
Council questions of staff. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Eric, you know, it's just a layman's approach to this. Why is 2018 staff recommending that versus 2007? What makes it better? If it's less square footage, it would seem that less possible square footage, it would seem that to me the developer would want to opt for the higher square footage percentage. You make more money. We're in a capitalist society. Can you kind of delve into why staff recommended this option instead?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, I think there's a couple of approaches that we take. From a land use standpoint, what we're looking at is our design standards and whether or not it meets those current design standards. In this particular case, they do. The design itself, it's taken into consideration basically on input from the residents, increasing some of those landscape buffers. In those cases, that's always a good thing that it kind of pulls those away. In addition, I think if you look at the layout of the southern buildings on that north-south axis, and I understand that there's some residents that are probably going to discuss that, on that north-south axis, you're going to have less of a building mass standpoint from a view from the south. And so when you look north, you'll see the sides of buildings versus the length of a building. And so that massing, I think, from our perspective, is a good thing. The other component about this that we don't generally look at, but is more of a private developer perspective, is the leasability and saleability, and then the economic impact for the community when it comes to jobs and business growth. This particular design, and I'll let the applicant speak more to it, is more a derivative of the market. When you look at the 2007 plan, that market, my understanding is that that market just isn't out there for those smaller buildings. Again, if we look at just kind of that administrative approval process, if we take off that McQueen Road frontage, they could come in with larger buildings to meet the market demand. I do not know if our economic development director's attending tonight. I don't know if he can speak to that or if the council desires that. But generally speaking, when we look at these things, we work with the development team. When they come in as a private developer, it is more market driven than anything. And then we work with them to make sure that that design meets our requirements within the capacity of the land use.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Councilmember Rowe?
Thank you, Mayor. I know a lot of people are going to speak, and I hate to. Anyway, I have to get this question out now, and I think you've said it, asked and answered, but I want to hear this clearly. That if the vote is approved tonight, then it's clear what Ryan Company would be able to do. But if it were to fail, then Ryan Company still has a great deal of license to do what they originally had designed, and with few concessions. Is that true?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rowe, that is correct. If they could come back, say it gets denied tonight, if they come back and remove those buildings out of that area along McQueen Road, we would be able to review that administratively. We'd still look at that point in time, some of the language in that 2007 approval still applies. And so you have the 45-foot building height, you have the lot coverage that's allowed at 55%, and then you have the setbacks that come into play. And we could, we would review it administratively.
All right, so to be clear, administratively means there would not be another meeting like this if they decided to go ahead and build their original plan. There would not be another council approval. They can come in and submit and build their project.
Councilmember Rowe, that is correct, with the exception of whenever a property along McQueen were to come in, that would go through the PDP process. The rest of the development could be approved administratively without a public hearing process.
I think you were clear about it, but I really want to be clear about that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It would be an administrative process, but there still has to be an approval. The approval would be, or the disapproval of whatever they submitted would be like by staff. But in my understanding on that is if in fact the case failed tonight, staff would have pretty clear direction, just as they would if the case passed. But if it failed, and then that somebody tried to come in and do an administrative process through staff, I would think staff would be taking that into consideration, city manager or city attorney.
Mayor, staff's administrative approval would be reflective of what was approved in 2007, the plan, the zoning, and the regulations. And as long as the developer met those requirements, then the staff would be obligated to allow the development to go forward.
You'd have to meet those requirements, though.
Correct. Just like they would if the council approves the PDP tonight.
Councilmember Hartke.
Great, thank you. And I do want to hear a little bit, I have some questions about traffic coming up, but so related to tonight, you had also mentioned that the 2007 plan allows some latitude in terms of the roads. So tying that in with this conversation, does it allow them to go out to McQueen with the right-in, right-out as well, as opposed to snaking along the canal? Does it allow a certain amount of latitude for a secondary entrance exit on that, or how does that one play in? Since there is apparently some brevity and latitude.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Hartke, that really comes down to the submittal process. When they submit for construction plans, it goes through our various disciplines for review. So on your screen is the 2007 approval, and I'll just kind of point this out as one of the differences. You'll see that there's a connection on the north side that would run through our future park, then connect to Queen Creek Road. That was not a requirement of planning. It was not a requirement of our Parks Department. It wasn't a requirement of our traffic division. That was a requirement by our fire marshal at that point in time. There was a concern that if you have a site like this, you need 2 points of access, and those 2 points of access have to be off of separate streets. And so in this case, one was off of McQueen and one was off of Queen Creek Road. There was some language that an emergency crash gate would be provided off of Lot 7, so that southwest corner. Our current fire marshal is taking a different approach, trying to work through some of the development. And the issue was if there's an accident on McQueen Road, we want to make sure that people can get in and get out. The current design reflects the input of our current fire marshal, showing that, hey, look, there's the main access point that remains kind of central to the site, but also secondary access on that southern end. It did not need to go through the park. There are some concerns with the park itself, mixing potential truck traffic with the park itself and operations. And so we would, when we get the submittal, send it through our various divisions for their review and approval to make sure it meets traffic design, fire design, and our civil design. In short, the flexibility, there's some flexibility to allow some redesign of access points, but I wanted to give you a little history as to why that Queen Creek, that north-south access point was provided. But yes, there is some flexibility in where that site comes out, where the access point is.
And a second question, not related to traffic, although I do want to hear more from that, is I can't find it in what's been provided today, but when I was looking over the flash drive with this piece, studying that over the weekend, there was a statement that said this subdivision shall comply with the residential standards dated May 23, 2002. Do both of these comply with that? Because I have no idea what that is, quite honestly.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Hartke, if it says residential, I think it's a mistype that we wouldn't apply residential design standards. We don't apply residential design standards to what would be industrial development. We have commercial design standards, and that covers everything that's not residential. It would apply to those, but a residential design standard, what we'd be looking at would be our standard. When you see a subdivision come through that's on the study session, the four-sided architecture of homes, box-on-box design, two-story, things like that. So I'm not sure why that would be in there, and I'm thinking it's a misprint, but I didn't read that, so I'd have to see what context it's in.
Okay,
But
and I'm sorry I can't give you better context with this, but so I thought that it just meant if this was in the middle of this, then there were some other statements or compliance, but you're saying it would apply if this was residential to itself standards? Is that what you're saying?
Okay,
So not a question of industrial in the midst of residential? That's where I'm confused.
Okay, there may be, okay, so there's some language, Councilmember Harkey, that when we have industrial development and it's adjacent to residential is nearby, there are some elements that we need to take into consideration. I thought you were saying that there's actual residential design standards applied like we do housing product. So when we look at these types of uses, we do take into consideration the impact of what that surrounding community is. In the 2007 case, the direct result of working with the neighbors and our parks department and the land swap was the buffer that's along the eastern side and the southern side. If you remember kind of, here, I'll go back to the slide of what that original plan was in the Air Park area plan. You'll see the business park directly adjacent to the residential. And again, through working with that land swap process and the neighbors, it came out to a buffer that's approximately 300 feet on the east and on the south. That is how we apply that. We then also have within our zoning code, when we look at the table of permitted uses, some language in there that the uses themselves aren't too obnoxious or intrusive into that neighborhood. We don't want the vibrations and the noise and things like that are covered in the zoning code.
So to be clear then, what you're saying is both of these would comply because of the buffer
Excuse me.
that was placed?
I'm going to clear the chambers if you guys keep this up. You're going to get your chance, and I'm not going to let anybody interrupt you guys either. But you got to let staff and council dialogue on this. Proceed.
So I guess the heart of my question, or back to it again, is the statement was this subdivision shall comply with the residential standards dated May 23rd, 2002, and it does so because of the buffer was put into place to make that compliance, as well as some other statements of what you had mentioned, obnoxiousness, noise, or whatever. So it does, both of these projects, is the heart of my question, would comply then?
Councilmember Harkey, the 2002 design standards specifically relate to designs of subdivisions and residential development. I think the intent, and maybe Mr. Mayo, if you have the questions for him, could clarify with this particular project. I believe the intent is when we have this land use, this light industrial land use, with nearby residential, that there are elements taken into consideration with the design and layout that recognizes that that residential is there. In this particular case, what that end result is pulling the site off of those adjacent property boundaries, so the 300 feet on the south and the approximate 300 feet on the east. That, I would say, is what we look at when combining those two types of developments adjacent to each other. Then in the zoning code, there's restrictions on the intensity of what that light industrial, what those uses can produce from a noise vibration standpoint, again, to further protect the community.
So you would say, again, I'm continuing to go back, the 2007 and the 2018, by the noise because of the buffer or the construction of the buildings. Of course, the first one was just platted. They would both comply to that earlier. That's what I think I'm hearing you say.
Councilmember Harkey, yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll take a couple more from the council, and then we're going to go to the applicant. So,
I have some questions.
council, for who?
Public Works and Utilities Director John Knutson, if I could ask a couple questions of him.
Sure.
It's not necessarily for Eric, so we're transitioning. This may be for the city attorney. I had one question. So there's a statement within the 2007 that's also been mentioned on the purpose, and I should have looked it up earlier, but I know it says something about the intent of the development being for the circulating road, being for light trucks and vehicles. But again, in lawyerese and interpretation of intentions, best intentions, does that mean in the 2000 plan that anything heavier than a light truck would not be allowed on the premise, such as, again, heavier semi-trucks or moving trucks?
If I may, Mayor, Vice Mayor, no, it does not mean that. Again, it's, you know, the wonderful things about purpose is they try to state the stated goals, but what we have to regulate on are what's adopted, what's approved by the council, and what the regulations say. That would not prohibit heavier trucks from being on that
Because
development.
it does state in the zoning, as was talked about earlier in I-1, that warehousing and distribution centers can be part of an I-1 location, that long list of possible uses, correct? So warehousing and distribution is part of that, which would entail, again, semi-truck usage in the 2007 plan, correct?
Vice Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, John Knutson, if you could stand for questions from Councilmember McClymans.
Thanks, sir. The reading hundreds of emails and comments on Facebook and whatnot, one of the recurring themes is the concerns with traffic. And I know we're not discussing zoning today, but I just out of curiosity, is there another employment use that would create less traffic, i.e. an office park that was put in? Is there another employment use that would create less traffic?
Well, actually there is, and that would be if the entire site was warehouse and warehouse only, as opposed to what the applicant is proposing, which is a mixed between the industrial and warehouse. And let me tell you how that works. The traffic analysis that was given to us from the applicant was based on the industry standard reference for this type of study, and it's from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And the information that I'll be giving you is from a trip generation manual that is used throughout the state and throughout the country for this type of analysis. So this is a warehouse is 1.74 trips per 1,000 square feet. Industrial park is 3.37 trips per day now per 1,000 square feet. To contrast, a shopping center is 37.35 trips per 1,000 square feet. So, and then I can go on. General office buildings, 9.74 trips per 1,000. Office parks, 11.07. So comparing back to what the applicant has given us today, which is about 800,000 square feet of warehouse at 1.74 trips per 1,000, and about 300,000 square feet of industrial, which is 3.37 trips per 1,000. This is relating to traffic. This is a very low impact development.
So from an employment use, it's one of the lowest traffic hits on the road?
As far as from a traffic count perspective, yes.
Okay, so looking at the 2007 PDP as conceptualized with the 56 lots, based on earlier conversation, I understand that the PDP allows a reconfiguring of lots and you can use up to 55%. But I did run some of my own calculations. If you took the conceptualized 56 lots and looked at the acreage, like 1 acre, 43,560 square feet, and applied the 35%, which is approximately what the 2018 land usage PDPs is proposing, means about an acre would have about a 16,000 square foot building. And ultimately that would be up to the end user and their size of the building. But to just give you perspective, if I applied that down all 56 lots, it's approximately 950,000 square feet, give or take, in a PDP where all 950,000 is considered light industrial. So in that scenario, what would be the calculation for light industrial traffic use?
That's a good comparison, Councilmember McClymans. And in that scenario, if they were to build out at the 35% or even the 55%, In today's proposal, you're looking at about 2,600 trips per day. And in the proposal that you had commented on, we would be looking at probably in the range of 5,000 to 6,000 or even higher trips per day, depending on that ultimate square footage of that industrial park. So you're looking at 2 to even 3 times the vehicle trips.
Under the 2007 PDP.
Yes, it's
Okay.
possible. If they were to develop under the maximum, you might even be up to in the range of 6,000 trips compared to the 2,600 number that is currently being discussed.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Since we're talking utility, I got one. Thank you, Mayor. So there were a couple of emails, and just to clarify, I know a lot of people haven't been fully involved, which is actually great, and we'll probably preface this a couple times. Thank you all for coming out and getting involved and making and letting us hear your voice. So a lot of you haven't been involved in some city politics beforehand, but one thing that City of Chandler is very, very good at is planning for water and future growth. So there were a couple of emails and some concerns that people talked about when it came to limited resources and water within Chandler. So you mind give us a little background, really brief, and I don't want to change the subject here, but again, addressing some of the concerns that some of the citizens had regarding water in Chandler, just briefly.
Well, Chandler has done a great job over past councils to plan for our build-out condition and our water supplies. Chandler went through a process about 3 years ago where we did another water purchase that not only gives us a build-out supply, but it also gives us an excess supply above and beyond what we initially see as our build-out volumes. So to that, water resources in Chandler, we're good, we're safe, and we have an excellent portfolio. As it relates to this project, we have, along with all the different land uses that I spoke of, industrial, shopping centers, general office parks, this particular land use is actually the lowest, one of the lowest, if not the lowest, as far as water consumption, and for that matter, wastewater production. So it's a very low impact development as far as utilities are concerned as well.
Would that be for both options, the 2007 and the 2018 plan? So they're comparable?
They are
They're
comparable.
comparable.
Warehouse, I would believe, would use less water than an industrial, but it's probably not important.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Okay. The applicant here.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I have one other question for our city attorney as well.
Okay, one question for the city attorney, then we're going to go to the applicant.
I know this is not a zoning case again, but can we stop the currently zoned light industrial use? And then what is our obligation on council when deciding on PDPs?
Mayor, if I may, Councilmember McClymans, the zoning case was decided back in 2007. This property has vested rights to develop under the light industrial uses, all the uses that have been described. Arizona is a very strong private property rights state. In fact, in 2006, we had Proposition 207 pass, which gave private property right owners the rights to pursue litigation in cities if they passed a law that took away those uses, that reduced the value of the property. And so we're not talking about use here. That's not, number one, that's not an issue before the council tonight. Number two, legally the property has the right to those uses as it exists today. And so what you're considering is the preliminary development plan. From a legal perspective, that is an administrative act, and that is, what that means is that the property owner has the right to develop the property in a way that conforms with our zoning code, the approved zoning, and our development requirements. And if they meet all those requirements, you can't say, no, you can't develop the property, in effect, from a legal perspective.
Okay, so our obligations today is ultimately to determine, is the 2007 2007 plan, the better plan, or the 2018 proposed plan, a better plan?
That is correct.
Okay. And if we don't do so, is there any potential damages?
If the council were to act in a way that the property could not be developed with the approved uses, there's potential claims that could be made against the city.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Is the applicant present? Will we get your name and address for the record?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Gary Hayes, 2198 East Camelback in Phoenix. I'm here on behalf of the Ryan Companies, and with me I have Molly Carson, Executive or Senior Vice President and Market Leader of Ryan, Josh Tracy, who is Development Manager. We also have our traffic engineer, because we knew there would be a lot of concerns about traffic, and we also have our architect. Mayor, Council, we're here today to talk about what I believe will be a first-class light industrial project that at full build-out will provide up to 1,800 jobs to our city. I will tell you, Mayor and Council, that I had a lot more presentation, but I think staff covered a lot of it, so I'm going to make it a little brief. We can put the... So this is a very important map. We talked a little bit about the land swap in 2007, and we found this in some of the documents, and if you see, in 2007, the eastern portion of the 150-acre site was owned by a private property owner. It abutted 20 acres, it abutted Lantana Ranch. The western 70 acres was owned by the city of Chandler and Maricopa County Flood Control District. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see where it says Airport RPZ, and it goes into what at that time was private property. RPZ stands for Runway Protection Zone. So the city of Chandler did not control the runway protection zone for the south portion of the runway. Very important for cities to have control over their airport runway protection zone. So there's a lot of discussion in the maps, or in the memos and things that I've read that talk about, let's do a land swap, let's wrap the project with a buffer from the community. And that's why, as Mr. Swanson said, you have that 300 feet around the project that buffers it from 20 acres as well as Lantana Ranch. So instead of being abutting property line to property line, there's now switched. The city of Chandler got their runway protection zone, and the neighbors got the buffer of 300 feet. Next slide, you'll see, and it might be hard to see, but I'll try to answer Councilmember Hartke's question. This is the 2007 PDP. Mr. Swanson went through this in pretty great detail. I will tell you that what we talked about as we looked at it is you can see between lots 7 and 8, there's another entrance on McQueen Road. So we saw that as, well, that makes sense. There's 2 entrances on McQueen Road, and you can see it's that white area there. We also looked at this and said, well, it made sense to have some landscaping on the southeast corner, because those residents in Lantana Ranch didn't have Applebee as an extra buffer. Middle drive aisle made some sense, rows of trees. A lot of this made sense. What we tried to do was we took what we thought was the good things out of the 2007 and then make it better. Now, probably the most important slide you're going to see tonight is this. There's been a lot of discussion about administrative approval. So as you can see, to the south is Lantana Ranch, to the east is Twin Acres. This is what could be submitted today completely to your staff, that staff could then administratively approve and issue building permits. This is about 1.5 million square feet with 530 dock doors. This is what's allowed today. So I will tell you, I went and talked to several of the council members back from '07, and I said, hey, do you guys remember this? And a lot of them actually did, because of that airport land swap. That didn't happen a lot. That was unique. This piece of property is unique. And I showed them this, and I said, you know, you could do that? And by and large, the ones that I talked to said, yeah. It said you can combine lots. We knew that could be basically staff could do administrative approval. Now, if you notice on your screen, lots 7 through 12 are blank, because lots 7 through 12, as required by the ordinance, would be required to come back to you, the current city council, for approval of PDP. So from our perspective, that doesn't make sense. It's not good for the community. It's not good for Ryan companies. It just doesn't make sense. You'll notice, I think as Vice Mayor asked earlier, that 45-foot tall building on the southern boundary is on the property line. 0 lot line, 0 setbacks. So that means it is right on the property line. That would be, I think as the Vice Mayor stated earlier, the wall. So we didn't think it made sense. So as Mr. Swanson alluded to earlier, Ryan Companies did a neighborhood meeting in May. They had a plan and zoning hearing. I think 2 people showed up at that. Unanimous approval to this council. There was, for lack of a better term, a Scribner's error that said, hey, we have an issue on a postcard. So it was continued to today. We were asked by council and staff, hey, go meet with the neighbors. We're hearing there's some concerns. So we did. So what you see on your screen is what we've done over the last month. So we met with neighborhood representatives on 9/20. We met with a neighbor on 9/26. We hosted a second neighborhood meeting on October 1st. I actually was there for that meeting, and I ran that meeting, and we stayed for 4 hours, and we stayed until every question was asked. We met with neighborhood representatives again. We sent a letter to the neighbors discussing we made changes to the projects. We've had continual email correspondence with the neighborhood leaders. And I will tell you the last one, walked door to door within a required notification area and met with neighbors at their homes. I will tell you, Mayor, Council, I've walked door to door a lot. I've never done it for a zoning case, never done it for a site plan case, but I did it today on this one. And I will tell you that it was very instructive for us. It was very informative. We sat in people's living rooms. We stood in backyards. As a matter of fact, we stood on a ladder in someone's backyard. And we got to hear what their concerns were. And we got to talk to them about the 2007 plan, the 2018 plan. And it wasn't just me. Ms. Carson and Mr. Tracy were with me as we went to every single door. We did that for every day for over a week. Every single day. Because we thought it was important. And we learned a lot. And I want to tell you what we learned and what we heard. So the first thing that we heard is traffic. Clearly, traffic is an issue. Traffic and trucks. So I got to be really educated on traffic. I spent a lot of time learning about traffic. What I did, and Ms. Carson and Mr. Tracy did, is we met with our traffic engineer, who's here today. We met with your traffic engineers. We met with your traffic engineers and our traffic engineers to try and figure out what we can do to address some of the concerns. Mr. Swanson, I believe, went over the TIA and how that worked. What we learned was really informative. So on McDOT standards, which is Maricopa County Department of Transportation, you are providing a level of service A on McQueen Road. You could add another 4 projects like ours and still provide a level of service A. Right now, there's about 27,000 vehicle trips per day on McQueen Road. We also started looking at what is the type of truck traffic. We didn't just look at what's in the book. We actually started going and looking at other developments around here that have this similar type of use. I actually called some of my clients that own and maintain buildings a little bigger than this for some of these individual buildings to say, what is your trip count from a truck? There's a light manufacturer just over at Gilbert and Germain. This happens to be in Gilbert. Maybe we can get them to Chandler sooner or later with this project. Has about 185,000, almost 200,000 square feet. Light manufacturing, perfect use for this. I said, what's your trip traffic a day? He said, we might have 10 trucks. Heavy day, we have 15. We went and drove and sat at an industrial facility similar to this on Dobson. And we watched. We spent 2 hours sitting there watching. I'm not a traffic engineer. I didn't put a little thing out. I just wanted to see what it looked like. And what we found is very minimal truck traffic. So then we go to the ITE, which is what Mr. Knutson referred to earlier, and said, what does that say? What we found out is we're looking at approximately, at full build out, the most possible trucks you can have would be about 230 per day. Now, when you think about that from a, how does that fit into the, what we have today? It's less than 1% of the traffic on McQueen Road today. So we also tried to figure out what can we do to help? What can we do to help take care of some of the concerns about traffic? Well, we met with the neighbors and they said, hey, we don't want trucks on that on the south right in, right out entryway. We don't want trucks there. And we said, okay, let's talk about that. So we said, we can put up a sign that says no truck entry. We can also, there's a decel lane that was scheduled for that. We can take the decel lane because people won't use it. That's one of the things we did. Now, interestingly enough, just yesterday, as we were walking in the neighborhood, we met an individual who's a homeowner that's an over-the-road truck driver. And I said, hey, can you help me out here? Can you give me some information? And we sat and talked to him for about 45 minutes. We talked about what we're doing to mitigate the concerns of the neighborhood. And we also talked to him about trucks. And I said, okay, so if you have a thing that says no truck entry and there's no decel lane, are you going to turn in there? He said, no, because I'm going to be worried that I'm going to damage the trailer. And if I damage the trailer, I have to pay for it. So, and I said, well, we're going to push everybody to the middle. The tenants are going to be told they have to have everybody go to the main entrance. He said, that's going to be very helpful. And this is a guy who does it for a living. I actually was very, very, very helpful to me to understand. The other thing that we've done as it relates to trucks is we've eliminated a lot of dock doors. We've eliminated 50 dock doors from this project. Now remember, this is something that we have to ask you of, what could it possibly be? Is it going to be that many dock doors? If somebody comes in and says, Ms. Carson, I want to build X building and I need 3 dock doors, but you have 20 on here, then she's going to build 3 dock doors. And one thing, before I forget that I think is important, I believe one of the council members asked about individual sale of lots or the buildings. We're doing a plat because if somebody wants to come and buy a building and we build it for them, we're going to be able to sell it to them. It's not going to be just Ryan companies owning these lots. So if somebody wants to own their own business, own their own building, that can occur the way we're doing this project. Another concern that we heard was noise. As you'll see later, we did a lot of things as it relates to noise. A lot of landscape buffering, a lot of trees, moving the buildings further back, turning the buildings interior, putting a 8-foot high wall with a gate in any truck courts. So we feel like we've tried to do a lot to address the noise. Another concern we heard was visual. Some of the same things I just talked about with noise will also help with the visual. 300 feet buffer, then we have our setbacks, then you have the trees and everything else. We also heard about lights. They're concerned about lights. I understand that. This is a unique piece of property. It's at the end of the runway. You can't have lights that are going to interfere with the airport. So people smarter than me, lighting engineers, which they have, will work with your lighting engineers to make sure any type of lighting we have will stay on the property, will not interfere with the neighbors, and will not interfere with the airport. The other thing we heard about was home values. Now, I am not a residential real estate expert. I don't even pretend to play one on TV. But what we did do is a little research. So as you see on your screen, FedEx, it's 2 miles away. The closest residential property is 149 feet. So that was built in 2015. So we took 2014 numbers for Arborlee Meadows and we compared them to 2018 Arborlee Meadows, which is the closest residential property to FedEx. That's 20% home value increase from 14 to 18 at Arborlee Meadows. Now, what does that stand in the rest of Chandler? Well, we decided to go and do a baseline of Lantana Ranch. From 2014 to 2018, Lantana Ranch went up 18%. Arborlee Meadows went up 20, Lantana Ranch went up 18. The next thing we did, and you may be familiar with this, is the Kyrene 202 Business Park. Kyrene, Gila Springs Drive, Boulevard, sorry. So Crestview, it looks very similar. There's houses, a park, a road, industrial. Very similar to what we're talking about today. The distances are almost exactly the same. So we did the same thing with Crestview, because as you can see, that Kyrene 202 Business Park has developed out recently. From 2014 to 2018, Crestview went up 27%. Arborlee Meadows 20, Lantana Ranch 18. So we are trying to do our homework. We're trying to figure out what is going to make sense, what works for everybody, and what we've done, as you'll see in front of you. So as you heard Mr. Swanson say earlier today, when we started off, we had 10 feet of a landscape buffer. On the south boundary, P&Z moved it to 20. Well, we have now increased anything by D and C, which is near the people who don't have Appleby. We've now increased that landscape buffer to 60 feet. We've moved the buildings north to accommodate for that. Everything on the west, we've increased the landscape buffer between 40 and 45. We've increased the landscape buffer to 30 along the south side. We've added the no truck entry sign. We also are having decorative screen walls. So what that means is we've been working with staff to come up with a decorative screen wall, vary in height from 4 feet to 8 feet, and kind of have various runs so that when you look at something, you don't see a single line. You'll see a breakup for the visual aspect as you look north. We also, I think, as was mentioned earlier, remove the roadway and we reduce the dock doors throughout the project. I think Mr. Swanson went over this a little bit. Allowed by right versus what Ryan project is. Front building setback, allowed by right 50 feet. Ryan project, south building's 150, north building's 225. Side yard setback, and in some cases rear yard, 0. South 173 to 103, north 210. Rear building setback 50, south building 95, north 165. The important one is lot coverage. Lot coverage is key. Allowed by right 55%, we're doing 35%. That is, I believe, as the mayor asked earlier, a 600,000 square foot reduction. 600,000. And then building height is 45, 38.6 to 46, and then north is 44 to 6. So what does our site plan look like? This is what it looked like. We rotated buildings C and D so they faced each other. There were no more dock doors facing out. You can see the 60 feet of landscape buffer and you see the 30 feet. What you also see when you compare it to the 2006 landscape plan that I showed you earlier, that landscape plan had 165 trees. We have 773. 773 trees for an increase of over 600 trees. Now that's helpful for so many things. It's noise, it's visual, it makes it look a lot nicer. So a 600 tree increase. And you can see the 300-foot buffer around. So I also want to give you perspective. And what does that perspective look like? This is it. I think in 2007, the council that said, hey, let's give them this 300-foot buffer, they got it right. They gave the neighbors almost a football field of distance. You can see on your screen, it looks really good because it's so far away. That's that 300-foot buffer. And with the addition of these trees, with the way that we have pushed everything back, made it smaller, brought it lower, this is the best plan. Because remember, we're not talking about use. I always want to say use because that's what we usually talk about. This is the best plan for the city of Chandler. And it's an important thing to remember that there are 3 citizen groups or community groups that we are talking about here. There's the airport community, there's the corporate community, and there's the residential community. And what we've tried to do is bring high quality, good jobs to the city of Chandler while still making sure the airport community was able to do what they did and still have as minimal impact as possible on the residents themselves. Mayor, I'm available if you have any questions, but I would like to reserve some time for rebuttal at the end.
Okay. Council, questions of the applicant? I'll ask a question. We received a letter today from Lantana Ranch HOA in opposition. You know, you've said you've been out in the neighborhoods. We did officially, they did go on record as opposing the case. You want to comment on that?
Mayor, I haven't seen it, didn't know it, but I can tell you, we were walking and knocking on doors, and there are several people in this room that we stood in their backyards or stood at their front porch or sat in their living room. So didn't know that the HOA was meeting, didn't know they haven't even seen it. So I would tell you that we did all that we could to go and talk to those who were in that notification area.
And I do want to say we've received a lot of emails in opposition, a whole lot of emails, and we have a whole bunch of folks that are here tonight that are weighing in opposition. I think I've received, to say 200 emails or so in opposition. I've only received one in support. And I'm not saying that to get an applause. We're talking about this case and you're presenting it. I mean, how would you characterize the opposition? Because I've been on the council a long time, and this is by far, other than maybe the Salt River project lines, which we had to work through, a large crowd. I mean,
Mayor, that's a fair point, and I will try to be as nice as possible. I think there was a lot of information that didn't make sense to people, because I can tell you that what I've heard when I was knocking on doors is, I was told you're building a 100-foot tall building. No, we're not doing that. I was told you're putting a medical dispensary, a medical marijuana dispensary in there. No, we can't do that.
Let him talk. You're going to have your chance. Let him. I asked him a question. It's a tough question. Let him answer.
We were told you're going to store marijuana. No, we're not storing marijuana. There's been, I'll tell you, I got a flyer from a friend of mine who lived about 2 miles away that was yesterday, and it said heavy industrial uses on the flyer. So we know this is light industrial uses. We know we are not asking for anything as it relates to use. So I unfortunately, Mayor, I'm afraid there was some heavy industrial is very different than light industrial. Heavy industrial is a rendering plant, a scrap yard. That's not what's going to go here. But if you get something on your door that says heavy industrial and you don't know better because you're just reading that, then I don't know, that may be part of the problem.
And I'm going to ask you a question, and I could ask staff, and if you want to defer to staff, because we're hearing the original zoning of 2007 was for light industrial and office. Light industrial definition to you is what?
Mayor, that's a great point, and something that if you look at the screen for a second. Okay, there you go. So G, F, E, D, and C. These are the buildings that are designed for multi-tenant. My envisioning of this is somebody who has an air conditioning business or a solar installation business. They've got an office in front, and they have people who work in the office, but they have to keep their supplies somewhere. You don't want to keep them outside, so you have this office warehouse type of situation that somebody could have that type of use. So as it relates to light industrial, my view of light industrial is, what does our code say? Because we're not going to do anything that's not in the code. We're not asking for anything above and beyond the code. We're only asking for what's in the code. So as it relates to office, I would say, yes, there's going to be a fair amount of office because it's going to be somebody's front office, right, and they're going to have their supplies in the back. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yes, yes. Mayor. And I mean, I know you've worked hard on this, but I've told you that there is a lot of opposition to this too, and I know you're presenting your side, they're going to present their side, but I appreciate your feedback. Councilmember Hartke.
I do have one other question related to traffic and your studies, Gary. I know particularly the last week, we've had a number of people writing us, mostly down on rigs, I think particularly over the weekend, even from Sun Lakes on down for fear. And I think the concern there has been traffic, probably semis. So you've addressed or you postulated the use of semis and who's going to be in here, and it seems to be a bit mixed, but what do you, for someone who has been writing to us from Riggs Road and Sun Lakes or whatever, it's not me, guys, don't look at me.
Not me either. I don't live in Sun Lake yet. Give me a couple of years.
Is there, where do you envision the traffic
Tell 'em
coming
you're busy.
from and going to get to this park?
That's a great question through the mayor and Councilmember Hartke. I almost said Mayor-elect Hartke, but I'll stick to council member. My envision is the way that I believe our traffic engineer designed the traffic impact analysis, and he's here, and I can ask him, 80% north, 20% south. Most to the 202, about 80% from the 202.
Okay, so for those who are south of Ocotillo, perhaps they're going to be driving north if they're on McQueen, but if their main corridor is Arizona, Alma School, Dobson, or heading out to I-10 on Riggs, that's not an issue, is what you're at least projecting to us.
No,
Okay.
through the mayor, no. I have to look to my expert, but I'd like to make sure that I'm correct. But he says, no, that's not an issue.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a handful of questions. When you walked door to door, what did you hear? You said you were getting some petitions signed. How did that go?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, we did get several petitions signed. We had a lot of people who say, and basically what the petition said was, hey, we see you made a bunch of changes, and we do have several of those. We had a lot of people who said, let me call staff, see what they have to say, and a lot of people said, thanks for the information. Every day we did go walking door to door and talking to the people.
Okay, thank you. Did the neighbors, so from when we first heard that this was going to be, we started getting emails, did the neighbors like say, hey, this is what I'd like to have? And so I guess my question is, we kind of know what the changes were from 2007 to 2018. I kind of understand that timeline. And I get where you're saying that this is more of a ready to build or, build the suit,
Right.
or whatever the term is called, so people can move right in, versus the 2007 is you buy a plot of land and maybe you build a building, maybe you don't. Is that how I understand it?
I think through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, the first three buildings we're looking at, the E, F, and G, that's phase one, those are speculative buildings. So we'll get them built. People will start coming in and leasing those buildings. In the 2007 plan, I think that's a possibility, but I also think somebody could have came in and bought 15 lots and built a building, or 25 lots and built a building. So I hope that answers your question, but that's kind of how I look at the 2007 versus the 2018 plan.
Okay, it does. So where do we go from the first time we talked in 2018 to today? So 2018A, 2018B, as far as what the neighbors said, hey, this I can live with because I know that something's going in here.
Right.
But I want you to do this. Where did that change? Because I understand that the 50 dock doors was more of a mistake from 2007 to today, but if you lowered those, can you go in a little bit more about those?
Right.
And then the rest?
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart. Actually, what you can do on 2007 is 530 dock doors. So we had 347 actually on our plan. So Ms. Carson sat down and said, okay, with the architect, said, how can we take some of these off? And so she took 50 off of all the buildings. We then sent that to the neighbors because they'd ask about that. Another thing that we did after meeting with the neighbors is we talked about that decel lane and the right in, right out in the south. And they said, hey, we don't want any trucks on there. So we said, okay, we'll take out the decel lane. We'll put in a sign that says no trucks. We also, I think as I mentioned earlier, we had 10 feet of landscape buffer initially. The P&Z moved it to 20. We're now at 30, 60, 40, and 45. We also rotated a building 180 degrees. So if you see on the screen, you can throw it up for me. Originally, the building C faced towards Twin Acres and a little bit of Lantana Ranch. What we ended up doing is flipping them so that C and D face internally to each other so that we could take some of those dock doors, the truck bays, away from the neighborhood. We also, I think, as I said, we did the landscaping, the moving the buildings to the north, the no trucks on the southern driveway, and then we added a lot of trees. a lot of trees, and to reduce the dock doors.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Hartke.
Could you go back to that one slide? Which one? The last one. Yeah, well, that one slide, that's a hard statement. All right, so I was looking at this again on the other drawings. On the south side there, what looks like an extension of the buildings, and then you've got parking in. Is there a screen wall there tell me about that, so you've got your landscaping below, you've got your buildings, you've got your entrance, your dock, bays, et cetera, but what's at the very southern part of those
Southern part
buildings?
of the buildings, through the mayor, you mean southern part of the building, southern part of the property line?
Southern part of the building, so right off the southern tips or ends of the buildings.
That is an 8-foot-high wall with a gate on the end. And I talked about that earlier. So that's enclosing the truck bays so that you're not seeing them. You're going to see an 8-foot-high wall with a gate that will then open when there are anything that would come in and out of that. Does that answer your question?
Okay, yeah, it does. You did say that. I apologize for not recalling.
And I think you can see it easier on this one, Councilmember Hartke. You can see those are, oops, I didn't know it was a touchscreen. Those are walls, and then there will be a gate there. I don't know if you can see that on your screen.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wong.
At the beginning, I heard that this project has already been approved by previous council on a lot of occasions. And forgive me if I'm wrong, okay? What I heard was, even if today, I don't know how other council members are going to vote, but even if we vote no on this, the Ryan company can still build. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Wong, if you could throw up the screen for me again. That is correct, but we don't believe, the Ryan Companies doesn't believe, that's the best plan that fits those 3 communities I talked about. As you can see on your screen, that can be built today. Very minimal landscaping, no setbacks. It's not good. It's not something Ryan Companies is in the business of building, because it's not something that's going to be a good asset to our community.
Thank you. I just want to be assured that you are not going to build up this project. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Ellsworth, just a question. I do have 3 speaker cards in support. I can either have them go before your speakers or after your speakers. It's your call. Now? Okay. Do you have 3? I'm going to give you each 2 minutes. Tony Bradley, we get your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
members of the council, Tony Bradley, address is 7500 West Madison Street, Tolleson, Arizona, 85281. For the record, I'm the president and CEO of the Arizona Trucking Association. I had heard that there was concerns about truck traffic in this project, and obviously anytime that there's a development project that there's concerns about trucks and the possibility of an economic development project going down because of truck traffic, I wanted to make myself available to answer any questions. So I don't know if it makes sense for me to go after. There might be some comments about trucks, truck traffics. That's up to your discretion. But I will say a couple, when I looked at this project, and people were talking about it as a distribution center, I can tell you that most of the distribution that happens in this valley happens in the West Valley. And it happens for a reason in the West Valley, and that's because 70% of commerce comes from the Port of LA, the Port of Long Beach. And they don't want to come into city center. They want to get to the big distribution centers in the west side of town, and then from there they can distribute it out to the valley and to the rest of the country. So as far as when I read the letters in opposition and saying this is a distribution center, I looked at it very much like Mr. Hayes looked at it, as a small business that had operations, had supplies that they need to take it out to service their customers, not as a large distribution center. And I can tell you what I see in the West Valley are large distribution centers with thousands of bays every day, and even those bays aren't filled every day. This is much more of a smaller situation, smaller scale. There was concerns I read in some of the letters about truck idling. I will just point out for the record that not only the state of Arizona has an anti-idling law, but the county of Maricopa has an anti-idling law. Trucks cannot idle for more than 5 minutes if they're not in operations. So idling and the pollution that comes from that doesn't exist. There was also a lot of concern about pollution. And I will tell you for the record that trucks since 1990 have reduced their emissions 98%, their greenhouse gas emissions. Matter of fact, in LA, we often joke that the particles that are in the air there are cleaner as they come out of our truck because of the dust and particle filters that are on our vehicles. But so pollution is an antiquated issue that people talk about when it comes to truck. They're cleaner, they're more efficient, they're EPA regulated. I see that I've got 23 seconds left, but those are just a few points I wanted to make out. And I'm, of course, one last point I will make out is that time is money for trucks, so they don't want to be sitting on property. Trucks nowadays, if you go past any facility that has a large amount of trucks, you will see empty trailers because the truck wants to come in, drop off its trailer, and get out of there. Time is money. They don't want to be sitting on the property. They're not going to be sitting in the area waiting. They want to get to their next job, and then they want to be there as quickly and efficiently as possible. With that, I will answer any questions you may have about trucks or truck traffic beyond my engineering, non-engineering degree at any time.
Yeah. I do have one question, just to me, I mean, I drive a small car now, and had an F-150 before, which I thought was big, but these semi-trucks, how long do they get? And again, when you talked about distribution centers, a truck coming in from LA and dropping off for distribution in the west side versus a truck maybe, again, hitting this part of property line. I know there's different lengths of trailers and different kinds of trucks, so what do you usually see on the east side of the valley?
So the standard combination of a truck cannot exceed a 53-foot trailer. So a trailer can't be 53 foot, and then the standard cab configuration is about another 15 feet. So that's your standard big rig coming from LA. On this side of town, you generally will break down that combination. So you might have a tractor trailer with a 28-foot trailer behind it, or even a box truck. And for scale of a box truck, the largest U-Haul. Those are the kind of configurations you're talking about on the east side of town. Looking at some of the traffic counts, just over on Chandler Heights Boulevard in Ocotillo, you only have, over the year, the average daily truck count is 1,600 trucks per day. I will mention that there's a Lowe's, a Target, and a Home Depot, which makes that truck traffic increase significantly. But everywhere else in the area, it's quite lower. I can't imagine that this project, looking at it, again, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a traffic engineer, would impact traffic as far as trucks go that greatly.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Thank you. The next speaker was Troy Peterson. You can please give your full name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Troy Peterson, 1295 West Washington. I'm here to speak in favor of this project from a context of I was the engineer of record and directly involved in the planning and the design of the Lantana Ranch project, along with the majority of the other projects in the area. And to speak from context of what was anticipated at that time in relation to this use of property and what it looks like today. So on the north end of Lantana Ranch, it was, at that time, what we had was the 1998 Air Park Area Plan, which showed that this would be clearly office, business park, light industrial, and so it was planned that way. Those lots all along the north end of Lantana Ranch were built either rear-facing, oversized pie-shaped lots, or extra depth on the lots. Backing up to Appleby Road is the road along the north end here. And the reason why Appleby Road goes part of the way through Lantana Ranch, but not the whole way, is this was pre-land swap. And so the eastern part was was private property. And so the intent of Appleby Road was to be, it's known as a minor collector street. It was meant to collect traffic from this future development to the north. It was set there, it's at the half-mile point, which is typical traffic location through city requirements. And it was to bring traffic from this development and bring it over to McQueen Road. And so looking at how over the last 18 years that things have played out, seeing the park and the 300-foot buffer, that wasn't expected back then. It was thought that we would have development right up against it. We built the lots up higher, we faced them rear, we did everything we could from a planning perspective to prepare for that. And so now seeing 300 additional feet, seeing the traffic's restricted, and that what you're seeing today is a much better situation than what was anticipated when Lantana Ranch and the surrounding communities were designed. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker for the supporting side is Charles Keith. If we could get your name and address for the record.
Hi, thank you. My name's Charles Keith, 7091 Belfour, Scottsdale, Arizona.
What's the street address?
My family, pardon me?
Belfour?
Yeah, Balfour.
Thank you.
My family's been in Chandler for 30 years. 19 years ago, myself and my family pooled our money and bought 160 acres, which was the original plot of land. Sold half of it to Maricopa Flood Control. The city of Chandler asked me to swap them and therefore would help them and help my parcel that I had left for a buffer zone. During that 19 years, I could have sold it to houses, and the city of Chandler told me I couldn't sell it to houses because I was in the plan for light industry. The apartment boom came on, and I wanted to sell it to apartments. The city of Chandler said no to my apartments. So they said, this is what we want, light industry. So I wait. I pay over $100,000 a year taxes on it for 19 years. I wait. I wait for the perfect builder, Ryan Construction, an A-plus company that builds magnificent projects. He lays out a perfect plot for that land with buffer zones, landscaping, and it's an A-plus company. So I say to you guys, approve it. And Mayor, you got 200, my family, there's my grandsons and daughter-in-laws over there, and I've got another 50 family down south of Chandler that never came. We just don't use emails. We're as much Chandler as anyone. I wouldn't do anything to hurt Chandler. My sons live on Trails, and it's a good neighborhood. The prices of the homes will go up. Eventually, that land's going to be all filled with industrial. It's working. The economic part of the state is working. We're getting companies from California. This is what we want. Fill this land. And here we have a A-plus company. All you have to do is drive up and look at their buildings. This will be a feather in your hat for Chandler to get Ryan Construction to build a $150 million project around that airport. You'll be the star of the Southeast Valley. Thank you very much for your time.
Will you stand for a question?
Yeah, it's not too hard.
So you mentioned Ryan Company, and I understand they're a good company. I don't think anybody's saying they're not a good company. But obviously you had something in mind in 2007. I assume you own the ground. What was the thought process when you came for your zoning? Did you have a builder at that time that was going to build that plan that you got approved by the city council?
All right, that was approved. I had a man that wanted to do a joint venture with me, and as we got into it, it became no good. It was unviable. Those small stores that you get a an upholstery shop or a car painting place, I would have never sold it out. But because it was there, that's why I thought about going back and getting it turned into apartments. Because I want to sell it. 19 years is a long time to pay the taxes and drive by that. I want to see something built there. And I know Ryan will do that project a good thing.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that you've done business in Chandler. But again, you did get that 2007 zoning.
This is a better, the people that speak in, the staff people that I heard, they're learned. I'm not learned with reading the blueprints, but it looks like a far better plan than the one that I had that couldn't be sold. So even if you take the one that we have, we're only going to build big buildings, and you're not going to see those 64 buildings because there's no one to buy them.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Keith.
Thank you.
Okay. Clerk, let's set the clock at 45 minutes. Like I mentioned at the start of the meeting, me and Mr. Ellsworth had agreed on 35 minutes. I'm extending that to 45 minutes. You know, maybe at the 15-minute marks, I'll mention where we're at, but if you could work your speakers through to make sure that they all get to speak in that allotment, that'll be good. He's given me the order he would prefer these speakers to speak in. So with that, we'll go to the first speaker, Mr. Matt Orlando. We get your name and address for the record. And clerk, the clock will be at 45, and then maybe let me know as
Boy,
we
she
get
started the clock already, Mayor. I didn't get
It'll
to speak.
happen.
That's all right. She's tough. Just kidding, Dana, just kidding. Mayor, you and I have known each other since 1989. We worked together probably for about 10 years. We always seem to be saying goodbye and hello to each other on this council. But I learned a lot from you. And one of the things I appreciate our relationship was your passion for your hometown. You've always, it was apparent in your decisions and by your record, you always reflected and put the citizens' needs first. And for that, I thank you for your many years of service. You probably won't see this many people when you leave, but that's okay. You're getting a goodbye right now. Thank you very much. Kevin, you and I first met each other about 25 years ago as coaches at the YMCA. We were opposing coaches. And I'll admit in front of all these people today, you were a better coach than I. You won more games than I. But again, we served about 3 years. You were a trusted member of the council. Your word was a bond, and I always appreciated about you. You always cared about the misfortune in our community. Again, that's something that's a good value in an individual. And you always cared about our citizens. You truly worked for the best of this community. For the rest of you gentlemen up here, I got a chance to meet you over the last year. Some of you a little bit longer during our race. It was a great race. I appreciate your honorableness and the great race you both ran. And I look forward to serving with all of you. But the reason why I say that is because I want the individuals behind me and watching on TV, maybe meeting for the first time. You're honorable people. You have a tough job to do tonight. I've been there, and I understand what you're doing, what the job is tonight. So, but I also, too, want to say a little bit about the background why we're here today. This is firsthand knowledge. I was on the council in 2007, and I did speak to several of the council members, actually quite all but a few of them. As we all know, one of them is no longer here. And we also talked about this rezoning case. Yes, the owner is correct. He wanted to rezone from agriculture to light industrial park. And some of the 40 citizens, let me say that again, 11 years ago, some of the 40 citizens, by the way, many of them are still living here today, got involved with this process, and they approved a light industrial park. And they were proud to live next door to that. Kevin Mayo, our planner at the time, did a magnificent job of bringing the landowner needs, the citizens' quality standards, which are the envy of the valley, and the citizens' need together in one package I like to refer to as a compact between those parties. Staff spent a considerable amount of time working on the design guidelines. It was that thick, and you guys seen that copy of that. I've never seen design guidelines that thick, gentlemen. The project had its flexibility, you're correct. Could go from 1 acre to many plots, and we get that. But the key, there's some key elements in there, key wording. This was going to be a garden, office, and light industrial building types. Staff thought of every fact. It clearly stated site circulation restricted mainly to automobiles and light truck traffic. The rezoning was approved 2007. Many of those individuals that are here today were in this building or the other building. What was presented to council that day was an ordinance to change the zoning. Some of the major stipulations: developer shall provide a building permit determination of no hazard to aviation. It was that detailed. Developer shall be substantial conformance with the development booklet. Lots 7 and 12 will be, as you heard tonight, will be a PAD 5-point. Building design shall be maintain some of the architectural diversity, varied in material, colors, etc. Setbacks, elevation. There was great pictures in there. The beautiful landscaping. This was a well thought out plan. Now let's be honest, council members, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, we started this process. We didn't ever envision a large distribution center. I mean, we didn't envision the Amazons of the world today, the large Walmart centers. We didn't envision those. This compact was designed not only to protect the property rights of the landowners, but it was also designed, and quite frankly, we keep forgetting as a society, this agreement was developed to protect the property rights of the residents who own homes in that area. Unfortunately, some on social media have accused these residents of being NIMBYs, not my backyard, or question why they live near these zoned land when they are, and why are they complaining now? Well, let me be clear and set the record straight. There were about 40 residents on 2 separate occasions that met to work on this compact agreement. Many appeared before the council, as I indicated earlier. Gentlemen, I would not be here tonight if it wasn't the fact that we are not in compliance with that agreement that we made with those homeowners, those design aspects. Part of the sexist community, like Scottsdale, Tempe, we have a history of being patient and denying projects and protecting our limited land from the wrong quality of projects. As I mentioned earlier, Chandler is known for its quality of life and its patience for the right growth projects. There are many times in the past when the council denied or wouldn't even consider entertaining a project that was not the right fit and didn't create substantial, high-quality tech jobs. In particular, we kept the airport and Price Road free from those type of aspects. Once it's developed with this current plan, we lose another large parcel for that type of high-tech inventory. I call this a Walmart of distribution centers because it's not the visions we expected. Stick with the agreement. Vote no on this and let's go back to the vision. Work with the residents, perhaps a mixed-use project with less intensive warehouse complex, perhaps smaller distribution and office complexes, something different. Finally, I can understand why residents are becoming more and more upset with their government. Think about all the initiatives, referendums, and other voters' decisions that are being usurped by elected officials who profess to know better than their voters. Gentlemen, please don't let Chandler be one of those governments that goes down that path. Listen to the citizens. Don't break that bond.
Councilman. Councilmember, would you stand for Councilmember-elect Orlando, would you stand for a question? Stop the clock. Thank you for coming out tonight. I appreciate it and appreciate your past service and your future service to be. Just want to drill down a little on the 2007 approval. Was there much discussion on industrial zoning at that time versus if you guys would have just zoned it commercial or retail? What was the thought on that industrial zoning designation that was put on it back then?
Mayor, there's a lot of thought on the single property owner, 56 individual owners. There's a lot of thoughts from residents that were interested in buying some of those single entities. But it was more of what it would look like, the vision. The residents understood that back then, Mayor. They understood it was going to be industrial. They approved that. How many times we have residents approve industrial zoning or even light? These residents were stood up and they counted and they said, yes, Mayor, we'll approve this, but please stick to these design standards. So that's the gist of it, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
The next speaker. Oh, thought I
Claudia
lost the
Blaze.
speaker card. Claudia Blas. Claudia, please give her your name and address for the record.
Claudia Blaze, 3533 South Senate Place, Chandler. It's in Lantana Ranch, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Tip Shraney and Chandler City Council members. Thank you for allowing us time to voice our concerns regarding the Ryan Company's proposed Chandler Airport Commerce Park site plans. Tonight we are here speaking on behalf of many communities in South Chandler who are in opposition to this proposed development. The concerned homeowners of Chandler here this evening represent communities from Arizona Avenue to Cooper, Germain to Riggs, and beyond to oppose the proposed plan. And you can see, I didn't want to read them all, but here's some of them, and if I left any off, I'm sorry. You have received hundreds of emails in opposition to this proposal. Here tonight, there are over 200 to 300 concerned homeowners in attendance who have signed opposition cards. An online petition has circulated regarding opposition to the proposed site plan and has garnered over 1,340 signatures. Several HOA executive board members have written statements opposing the size and scope of this project. Clearly, you can see the outpouring of opposition to Ryan Company's proposal by concerned citizens of Chandler, your constituents. Please do not dismiss us as being uninformed or deficient in facts. I assure you we have done our homework. We have attempted to work with Ryan Companies on several occasions, and although they say they're listening, they aren't. Their concessions are not enough to help mitigate the impact that this proposed plan will have on our communities. We are aware that the site is zoned I-1 for business light industrial, but we are arguing that this particular site plan is not in the best interest of the communities that it will reside next to, and not the conceptual plan that was sold to the residents or sold to the community in 2007 when the land was changed from agriculture to light industrial. At that time, the city, the landowner, and the residents, I believe about 40 residents, worked together to come up with a plan or a compact that was a much better fit for the existing residential neighborhoods. The currently proposed high-intensity 338 truck dock or 300 truck dock and over 1.2 million square foot warehouse distribution complex with at least 115 tractor-trailer parking stalls does not resemble in any way the conceptual plan that was sold to the community in 2007, on which many based their decisions to invest in their neighborhoods. This new design will harm the community in many ways, as our speakers will put forth tonight. Per the City of Chandler Municipal Code, purpose of light industrial is, this district, and I quote, this district is intended to accommodate those light industrial uses which are not offensive to nearby agricultural, residential, commercial, or other uses, and for business uses which generally support and are integrated with these industrial uses. Also, table of uses for light industrial states, I quote, light industrial operation not offensive, obnoxious, or detrimental to neighboring uses by reason of dust, smoke, vibrations, noise, odor, or effluence. Is Ryan Companies and the City of Chandler going to dictate what is or isn't offensive to us? We are asking Ryan Companies to go back to the originally approved 2007 conceptual design sold to the community when the land was rezoned. It was sold as low intensity regarding truck docks, height of buildings, tenant use, and not offensive to the community. The 2007 plan, as described in design guidelines in the preliminary development plan approved by Council January 11, 2007, appeared to be sensitive to the existing residential neighborhood and the Southeast Chandler communities as a whole. It called for low-rise, light industrial, and professional business projects. Anticipated buyers will be small users for light distribution, light assembly. The plan is proposed for 1- and 2-story projects only and is restricted in total size of buildings. Site circulation is intended to be restricted to mainly automobile and light truck traffic. You may have been lobbied by Ryan Companies and its lawyers for a month or more now. They may have had your ear, but you have had the opportunity to listen to only a few of our concerns prior to this meeting. Now it's time to hear all of your constituents' concerns put forth in a respectful and factual way. If any of you have made up your minds on how you vote before coming into these chambers tonight, we appeal to your sense of fairness to listen to us with open minds and only then make a decision. You owe it to the people who put most of you in office. So please vote no and let us know you care about our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Next speaker is George
Schreiderich, 1267 East Carib Place in Chandler, Lantana Ranch.
Thank
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'm honored to stand here tonight to be one of the voices of the many great members of my community whom are my neighbors. We come here tonight not with the show of a mob brandishing our pitchforks and torches, but as a well-informed, solidified community who have done our due diligence and will respectfully put forth our arguments, facts, and findings. We hope you will see, as we do, this project, as proposed, is not compatible with the existing models for residential neighborhoods of Chandler. In a show of solidarity tonight, we all came wearing white, so I do want to thank Molly Ryan for doing it the same and joining us, so thank you. My wife and I have been tax-paying homeowners in Chandler for over a decade. We decided to relocate from Scottsdale back when the recession hit our state in full force. It was during these trying times that our elected officials' colors had truly shown. We admired how Chandler's core group of leadership braved the storm with financial stability and calculated decisions to stabilize and advance the city forward with its citizens' well-being at the forefront. After many years of residing in Chandler, we decided to venture out one Saturday and look at some homes a bit further south to allow us better access to the parks and bike trails that make this city so appealing. We ended up looking at a house in Lantana Ranch. And it was on that Saturday, something clicked for us. As we admired the backyard of our listing, my wife and I heard something that mostly remained non-existent since we relocated to Arizona. It was the laughter of children playing outside. They had put down their video game controllers, picked up their bikes, and went outside to play. In our mind, this was the exact definition of a neighborhood and one we wanted to be a part of. We began our process of due diligence, as any responsible adults would be, when making such a large investment into a city. We understood the occasional plane would fly over, or a change of wind, we'd get the reminder to the north that it's not fully urbanized with the dairy farm. We also specifically looked at the proposed plans to the field to our direct north, noting that the approved plans for 2007, it looked great for growth and aligned with the progress and the visions of the current city council and your brethren of past councils. With our homework done, we decided to move forward and invest nearly $500,000 into the community. Everything was great and the community was better than we had hoped for. We now, once again, resided somewhere where neighbors knew each other and watched out for one another. This community spirit has recently been put to the test. A few weeks ago, someone in the neighborhood decided to ask the person across the street about a simple 3x5 postcard stating a council vote on September about a newly proposed changes to the Chandler Airport Commerce Park site. The person asked another, so on and so forth, which now has led to this grassroots, old-school word-of-mouth movement. A community meeting was called by homeowners to educate our immediate neighbors and eventually the broader community regarding the changes to the 2007 approved plan. Fortunately, for the residents of South Chandler communities represented here today, the initial community outreach efforts of a few had a tremendous snowball effect and the word spread. We have neighbors who have stepped forward with professional expertise in the various areas of negative impacts that we will present here tonight. I bring to the table my career in the field of emergency response management. I have personally responded to every type of hazmat spill in every distribution center located within the distribution hub in the city of Phoenix, 35th Ave to 59th Ave, Buckeye to Broadway. I can personally attest to the products transported through those city streets coming in and out of those distribution centers, as I have responded to spills that range from sodium hydroxide, hydrogen peroxide, ammonia, sulfuric acid, hydrofluoric acid, nitric acid, to name a few. The East Valley hosts many semiconductor businesses as well, which could introduce every chemical I listed above, as well as its additional commodities such as isopropyl alcohol, methanol, phosphine gas, arsine gas. These are very acute, toxic, reactive, ignitable, and corrosive substances that come hand in hand with distribution centers and travel through the streets as commodities. As a sidebar, I would also like to point out that within those 24 Avenue footprint of Phoenix, there are 0 neighborhoods. The city of Phoenix has strategically utilized proper planning and zoning to keep these types of buildings out of their neighborhoods and keeping their residents safe from the hazards associated with distribution centers. I can assure you, my neighbors and I do not want these dangers and health hazards welcome to our backyards. To allow the proposed changes to take place is a disservice to this community and a direct contradiction to the core values that deliver the progression of the city of Chandler to the top tiers of our great state. As our elected officials, to allow this monstrosity to proceed in this location, the city of Chandler is directly and indirectly opening your residents to blatant hazards. I want to make it abundantly clear to the city that we believe buildings like this do belong in our city, just not in our neighborhoods, as this project clearly does not align with the city's vision within the model of our neighborhoods. I implore each and every member of this council to take into serious consideration the words of my fellow speakers and resident professionals of our community tonight and responsibly vote no to this proposed site plan and continue to protect the safety and quality of life that we, the residents, have invested in. In closing, I want to thank you for allowing me to express myself on behalf of my neighbors, our soldiers and veterans for giving me the right to express myself, and I want to leave you with some words of our forefather, Thomas Jefferson. The purpose of government is to enable the people of a nation to live in safety and happiness. Government exists for the interest of the governed, not the governors. Respectfully, the Schreider Town.
Okay, thank you. George. Next speaker is Michael June. Michael, if you could give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Michael June, 3627 South Newport Street, 85286. Council members, Mr. Mayor, council members, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and our past conversations that we've had. I found you to be open-minded and willing to discuss the concerns from the community perspective. And I appreciate that you're continuing that tonight. So thank you, sirs. For some time now, there's been strong underlying concerns around the size and the scope of this project in the community. We've always had that feeling in our gut that something was off, something wasn't right. That feeling has now been changed into an almost undeniable fact that light industrial or warehouses is no longer an accurate way to describe this property. We've come across a published book, a book that has even been used in course material at the University of Washington, specifically written to help the reader identify industrial building types based on its height, its footprint, its dock configurations, its dock densities, so on and so forth. I had a handout. I gave it to you, sirs, earlier, the clerk, and I believe she passed it out. It's in a paper clip if you'd like to follow along. What you see here, sir, is when you put the information together from this book, you can easily classify buildings of what type of industrial building it will be. Every single one of the buildings that are proposed have the dock ratio and the size that fit perfectly within heavy distribution. These are not regional warehouses, sirs. These are not bulk warehouses. What do I mean by dock ratio? The density of docks, how closely they are together. You can see in the proposed drawings, triangle after triangle after triangle after triangle. They're so dense, you can't fit anymore. All these coverage, and the great thing is that the site coverage, how much area these buildings cover, is purposefully lower. Purposefully lower. You fit in extraneous parking for delivery cars, vans, trucks, semi-trailers. Remember when Ryan said they were doing us a favor by making the buildings smaller, have the smaller coverage? When you read the guidebook, it clearly states that 30 to 40% coverage is very specific to heavy distribution and is by the functional design and necessity for heavy distribution sites. wasn't a favor. It's just a necessity of the design. Highly functional buildings, A and B, what you'll notice is that they have docks across the north side and dense docks across the south side. What that is a feature that's called cross-docking. It's a way to quickly move material. We have trucks come in from the north side with material. There's trucks waiting at the south side. Instead of waiting, instead of taking the load off of these trucks and putting them on racks where they'll sit for time, you can move them quickly. If there's other trucks waiting, you got 10,000 oranges coming in, 2,000 is going to go to one truck, 3,000 to another, 5,000 to another, and boom, they're gone and there goes that truck. It's designed specifically to move a high volume of material quickly. That's why those buildings are built like that. You might notice the smaller buildings that are there. What are those useful for? When you have a distribution center where loads are coming in and out, you need something to get it that, it's probably an overused term, but that last mile, to get it to the local site. What's the most efficient way to do that? Through delivery trucks, cars, vans. We've all had that random person show up in an odd car or van and drop a package on our doorsteps. These small buildings help to sort things down quickly. The traffic figures that were calculated against a basic warehouse classification does not fit with this heavy distribution classification. If the traffic was calculated against a parcel hub or fulfillment center, which fits in a heavy distribution category, it would be 3x or 7x the traffic per ITE standards, per the book that your traffic engineers will use. It's clear that there are indisputable signs that this complex is a potential for a heavy distribution site. The following slide is our challenge to Ryan Construction. If this truly isn't a heavy distribution site, and it's there built specifically for warehouses, then return to a single entry point. You don't need that second entry and exit point. The reason why it's there is because they're going to have a high volume of cars and trucks going out. Yes, they don't mind that it's restricted to no trucks because we have plenty of delivery vans, delivery cars.
Do you have a photo of what you're talking about? They didn't put it on our screen. Could staff?
It's in the, cannot see this?
I see you.
Oh, it's not a picture, sir. It's some bullet points.
Okay.
There. So return to the single entry point design. 2007 design had one way in and out. Yes, there was a second place, and it was specifically there for emergency exits only. This design has two roads in and out. If they truly don't have this high volume of traffic going through, close down that road, that second south driveway that's causing all the traffic concerns. Put a crash gate there. Have that for emergency exit only, emergency entrance and exit only. Remove the cross-docking configurations on building A and B. Warehouses only have docks on one side. Have the number of truck parking stalls. Reduce the number of docks to a ratio of 7.5 to 10,000 square foot per dock. Get back in these regions. Get out of the heavy distribution arena and get back in the production warehouse, bulk warehouse. Employ specific safeguards to ensure that this site does not become a fulfillment center or a parcel hub. Commit in a legally binding way to say we're going to limit the time of operations to daylight hours. Use a building configuration that puts all the truck bays internal to the site so that we can't see them from the outside, so that the sound retains within the buildings. And become fully compliant with the Chandler Air Park Area Plan for light industrial classification. I'm stepping away from the 2002 document briefly. We're all familiar with the Chandler Air Park Area Plan. It's the area that encompasses this and several other surrounding areas. In there, you'll find that light industrial is defined as encompasses low-intensity uses such as warehousing and light or high-tech manufacturing industries. Where it goes on to industrial, includes production, assembly, and manufacturing. It doesn't have that low intensity. You read further down, it's high intensity. Light industrial, low intensity. High industrial, high intensity of land use. Additionally, you can excerpt out of that is that light industrial denotes uses for small manufacturing, small warehousing, and small distributions. The industrial doesn't have that qualifier in front of it. Additionally, I pulled these excerpts this afternoon, I noticed that the FAR is set at 0.32, the floor area ratio. Essentially, the amount that the building can cover the percent that it could cover on the plot. Now, there is a city code that says 55% coverage. But as we all know, the Chandler Area Air Park Plan has additional restrictions upon those things, and it specifically says 32. I believe I saw earlier that Ryan Construction Building are 35%. Are they not in compliance with this? Have I missed something? I certainly may have. But if they're not in compliance, I don't even know how this is a reasonable proposal to approve or deny. I want to take a step back for a minute, and I just want to say that it's clear there must be a demand for a heavy distribution site in Chandler. There might be some very attractive companies that would come with that. But I think it's key to remember in saying tonight that saying no tonight doesn't change the demand for this need in the valley or in Chandler, right here. This simply means that demand is going to remain until some company or companies fulfill it. A no vote simply means a more appropriate site to construct this will be found. Gentlemen, a no vote is full of wins. A better site for this complex will be found. The land in question still gets built out. And it will be done based on a 2007 compact between the city, the landowner, and the community, because that's what fits with the plan. Everyone wins. My final thought is one that often gets shared around my workplace. Because in my workplace, we often deal with some very time-sensitive decisions that can have large impacts on the company. When we're faced with a difficult situation, we often say to ourselves, the most expedient thing to do, the right thing to do, aren't always the same thing to do. I and the community implore you to vote no on 5 and 6.
Mayor.
Hold on. Thank you, Mr. June. We'll get to the question. The next speaker will be Chris Dunham. When you get the floor, give us your address for the record. But Councilmember Stewart.
Can we have somebody look into that .32 requirement by code that he had pointed out and get back to us before the...
Write it down and we can get an answer to that when the speakers are done. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Ken McAllister, 1346 East Carob Place in Lantana Ranch. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today as a homeowner of Lantana Ranch since 2006. I was one of the 40 homeowners that worked with the landowner and the city to come to this 2007 proposal. That plan was for, quote, commercial office and industrial business park. And the traffic was, quote, limited to cars and light trucks. Also, quote, 1- and 2-story projects only. I looked at this site plan as some place I could put my small growing business. I could purchase a plot and build a space that would allow my business to grow right in my backyard. But with the proposed Ryan plan, I cannot do that. I would like to elaborate more on this construction project that Ryan has proposed to build. Michael has just shown that this project has been misrepresented as light industrial and warehouse. It is a heavy distribution center they are building. One thing that comes from heavy distribution center is large amounts of traffic. The traffic to this proposed center will bring cars, delivery vans, and large amounts of semi-trucks to this facility. The traffic study that was presented to the city by Ryan predicts that there will be an increase of 2,694 vehicle trips per day. This calculation was done with light industrial in mind. Now that we know that it is really classified as heavy distribution, that number will grow up to 7x, or 18,858 trips. That, council members, is a lot of vehicles on the McQueen corridor and surrounding communities. To further this conversation, the traffic study only observed 2 major intersections, McQueen and Ocotillo, McQueen and Green Creek, and Appleby Road. This is only a 1-mile stretch. It did not take into account any of the impact of the surrounding communities we'll see, nor does it show how it will impact the exit and entrance of the 202 freeway from McQueen. We, the citizens of the community, have spent countless hours looking at this 139-page document to find all of its flaws and how it is not representing the whole picture as to what this type of proposed project will bring. Have you, council members, studied this document fully to realize its ramifications to the community and to the city? Or have you relied on staff to tell you that the roads will handle this kind of traffic? With a meeting we had with staff and Dana Alvarez, the traffic engineer, we were told, quote, "It does not matter if it is a truck or a car in traffic, it is calculated the same. It is volume." So you're telling me that semi-trucks has the same calculation as a car. I'm not sure which roads you travel on, but myself, not as a traffic engineer, know that a semi-truck has more mass and takes up more space than a car. The president of Severe Crash Analysis and Reconstruction LLC, Don Stevens, sent me this regarding this proposed construction. He quotes, I am a accident reconstructionist. My job is to investigate car wrecks and figure out the speed, direction, and position of the cars and trucks. As a result, I investigate a lot of accidents that have to do with 18-wheelers and other commercial vehicles. My experience has made me very wary of increased commercial traffic down the road which serves residential homes. Speaking of the traffic light to enter onto the 202 freeway traveling west, we have all seen the turn lanes on the overpass fill up, forcing vehicles to stop for two different traffic lights, once at the south edge of the overpass and again at the north edge, before they can enter the highway. Every truck tractor that enters the turn lanes will displace about 3 vehicles, each of which has an average length of about 16 feet. Don Stevens continues, research has shown that on an average, vehicles leave 8.9 feet between their bumper and the rear bumper in front of them at a stoplight. That means only 11 to 12 vehicles will fit in the turn lane queue for each cycle of the light. One additional truck tractor in the outside left turn lane would decrease the traffic flow in that lane by 25%. Displacing 3 of the 12 passenger cars that can fit. He also says, it occurred to me also that the distribution center will require the installation of a new traffic signal in order to moderate the traffic leaving the facility, which staff and the traffic engineer has said that it is not needed currently. The traffic light will likely receive less priority than the traffic flowing on McQueen. That means that we will not have a steady flow of one vehicle entering the traffic. We will have a group, or as he calls, platoon, of multiple trucks that leave the facility each time the new traffic light stops traffic on McQueen and gives the distribution facility the right of way. That suggests that anyone traveling on McQueen who gets stopped for the distribution center light would then also be stopped for the light before the overpass and the light after the overpass, because of the platoon of just 3 tractor trucks would completely overwhelm the overpass lane. This light will create an additional traffic hazard of tractor trucks making a wide right turn lanes on red and then changing lanes twice in 1 mile in order to reach the left turn lanes before they get to the overpass. This entire project should also concern he continues, this entire project should also concern the homeowners and businesses along Arizona Avenue, because it will certainly push significant amount of traffic that currently uses McQueen to the next closest access to the freeway. This opinion of a professional not working for Ryan or for the city has come to the same conclusions we as homeowners have, that this traffic study is drastically understated because they use light industrial and did not take into account the surrounding areas. We are not sure why all of you cannot see this also. Ryan has told us that there will be 15 to 18 trucks an hour from this facility when we met with them. How can they know this? If that is true, then why not significantly reduce the 338 loading docks and 115 parking spots for the semi-trucks? The new plan that they brought has less than the 338, but on the current plan that was submitted for the PDP has 338 loading docks and 115 parking spots. How that was reduced, us as homeowners have never seen that plan. In reality, we will potentially be seeing over 100 trucks leaving the facility each hour. This will significantly change the southwest portion of Chandler forever, from Hunt Highway to the 202, from I-10 to Gilbert Road. We will all be affected. McQueen and Queen Creek will become the choke point of our city. If you will each take out your phone before you cast your vote and ask Google directions from Tucson to McQueen and Queen Creek, look at the path that it will take you. Straight up 587 Arizona Avenue. In August of 2017, the Santan News reported on the front page, Chandler paves the way in battle to make congested intersections as safe as possible by rebuilding 9 of them using photo radar. If you read the article by Jim Walsh, the Maricopa Association of Government compiles a list of the county's 100 highest risk intersections for traffic collisions. Using a formula that includes the number of crashes and their severity, frequency, and type. And McQueen and Queen Creek made that list. And it was so high on the list that Chandler decided out of all of the intersections within the city that this was one of the 9 most dangerous intersections. So photo radar was installed at that intersection. Do we really want to add another element of safety concern to this intersection by adding even 1 semi-truck to the mix, let alone potentially more than 100 per hour? Let us also look at the great places located along McQueen Corridor and the Southeast Chandler. We have Tumbleweed Park and the Rec Center. We have the tennis courts, Paseo Vista Park, the dog park at Paseo Vista, and the Paseo Vista Trail that runners and bicyclists use. Have you ever thought about how will this impact the bikers and runners that cross McQueen at this area, let alone at Queen Creek and Germain, where a bicyclist was just killed a couple weeks ago? Do we want to shun the people away from this great, beautiful area by bringing all this added traffic and safety issues to this area? What about the things that happen and events that happen at Tumbleweed Park, like 4th of July celebration, the Ostrich Festival, Chili Cook-Off, to name a few? Are people still going to flock to this area when they have to fight all the increased traffic caused by the proposed heavy distribution center? I ask you, City Council members, does this Ryan proposal look like anything that the 2007 compact that we have here, does it look like anything in here? I have to say to you, it does not. Why are you allowing staff to drive this project? Can you not see that we find this project offensive by our numbers here today? Thank you all for coming. We ask you to join with us.
Excuse me, sir. Are you almost done?
I'm almost done.
Okay.
We ask you to join with us, homeowners, and be our voice and vote no to item 5 and 6 and do the right thing for the city of Chandler. Thank you.
Hold on 1 sec. Phil, we're at 45. I know you got 3 more speakers. We're going to get to them. How much more time do you need? Couple minutes per speaker? Okay. Yep. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record.
Chris Dunham, 1036 East Tonto Drive, Chandler, Arizona, Alamosa Estates. Chris Dunham, professional full-time realtor in the Valley for nearly 20 years, average about $10 million a year in sales, so you understand I'm experienced and I know what I'm talking about. David Marks, a colleague, and I, a fellow realtor, we sat down, did a side-by-side comparison of 2 projects, one in South Phoenix, one in Chandler, that are both high industrial, what Ryan Companies wants to do here. In both locations, we did a comparable sales analysis, looking at the South Phoenix version, the Almost Glen Ray version, and what we foresee here at our spot. In both cases, collected data, we were able to ascertain the values dropped in both locations by 15% the first year the facilities were active. Location A, we researched a 2-mile radius, while location B, 1 mile. The difference was due to location B being surrounded by neighboring communities and location A only having a small community within a mile radius. In both cases, any homes that were directly adjacent to the property became part of the external obsolescence, which is an element of depreciation that is, in this case, incurable by the homeowner and permanent. The values of these homes will always be affected. This will never go away. In fact, in addition to the 15% value drop in the first year, the homes will always see an additional 10% drop in value, much like those backing major roads, intersections, or power lines. In my experience, when dealing with appraisals on listings I have sold, if the home backs to any of the aforementioned, the value, according to certified appraisers across the board, will drop at least 10%, and the selling ability to sell the home in a timely manner decreases greatly, because who wants to live behind power lines, major roads, freeways, or intersections? There's a reason why new home communities sell the externally obsolete houses last and offer deep discounts. Everyone here whose home will be adjacent to the proposed property within a 2-mile radius, raise your hand. Every single homeowner who's raised their hand is potentially going to lose 25% value the first year. Furthermore, due to the external obsolescence, they will never recoup the 10% drop in value as their home, their investment in the future, will be forever changed for the worse. The American dream is home ownership. It's the largest part of our financial portfolios. Council members, I ask you, would you live next to this? Would you want your backyard right here and seeing this every day when you woke up to have your coffee? I think we can all agree the answer to that is no. So I thank you for your time and trust your vote on items 5 and 6 will be no, to show your community how much you care about their opinions.
Thank you, Matthew. Next speaker is Paul Mesher.
Right.
Name, address for the record, please.
My name is Paul Mesher. I live at 3276 South Diamond Drive. That's in the Twin Acres neighborhood, and I'm here to talk today. I've been a Chandler resident for 23 years and in Twin Acres since 2005. So I was there when the 2007 was done. If you know anything about our neighborhood, it's very close. We talk a lot. There's been discussion about the 40 people who worked. Those 40 people who worked with city then fanned out to the neighborhoods and talked to more and more. I wasn't one of the 40. I was one of the ones sitting in the kitchens with the people from my neighborhood who were, said, here's what we're talking, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're saying with the city and what we're agreeing to. That we're saying we're okay with this being rezoned, we're okay with this because it's gonna do something that brings value to our neighborhood. It's gonna something that blends well. I wanna touch just a couple of things that are in the documents from 2007. These are quotes. This is from staff under development standards. It says, architectural finishes will vary and building designs are mandated to incorporate architectural elements to break up horizontal wall planes while incorporating vertical relief in the building wall or architectural elements in the front wall plane. Building facades along streets will feature an abstract expression in the design or massing. We expect to see a variety of architecture in what we have in this type of building and in what was promised to us as a community. In the design guidelines that exist in this massive document, it says this. Sorry, I have to find it again. It says, although no projects are provided at this time, here's a sample of anticipated architecture showing the variety. I'm sorry I didn't make pictures for y'all. I don't know if you've seen this. I will hold them up and then set them down for the camera. Could be something like that, or like this, or like this. Here's a couple, 3 more. I'm not going to put them all up. At the end of the day, what we discussed and we were promised was, to be honest, a little bit of what the applicant discussed earlier. Small businesses that needed a space and a loading dock and some room around to do their business. What we weren't ready for was this. This is a photograph of a facility almost identical to buildings A and B that's almost completed in West Phoenix. If you look at it, this is the shot of the single building. And if you guys can't see it, I want to walk it around so that you can get a look at it.
Put it down, it'll be on
Put
our
it down here
screen.
and you'll be able to see it? Okay. There is nothing architecturally varied about a wall of loading docks. There's nothing you can do. You can't make this, or this, or this with a wall of loading docks. This is what I'm asked to look at literally out of my backyard. My property backs up against this development. More to the point, when I look at a wall of loading docks and I hear somebody say, oh, it's only going to be a few trucks. Over 60% of the perimeter of the building is dedicated to truck loading docks. This is meant for lots and lots of trucks going in and out. It's not the small business that needs a truck or two. This is meant for 50 trucks on one side and 50 trucks on the other, moving in, moving out. And we all know the tractor trailer, for all of its cleanliness environmentally, the noise of a tractor trailer has never changed. And as we start thinking about what that sounds like to the surrounding houses, to the surrounding park that's supposed to be immediately adjacent to that building, nothing but big rig, nothing but big rig. This is the building that doesn't meet the agreement that was made with the homeowners. We trusted in 2007 that the council, that planning, that Chandler would do right by us in exchange for our support for the rezoning to industrial. That building is a betrayal of that trust. I'd ask you to vote no and ask staff and the applicant to go back to the drawing board and bring back something closer to what was represented within the boundaries of the needs of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Next speaker is Susan Ellsworth. Could get your address for the records.
I'm gonna cut it like really short. Just for the people behind me. I'm Susan Ellsworth, I'm sorry, 3225 South Dryman Drive. And my property is in Twin Acres as well. I'm neighbors to Paul, who's just spoke. So, man, this is like totally gonna be shortened. I just wanna thank all of you for allowing us this opportunity. The answer is easy, a no vote on number 5, and I think everybody in here will be very happy. I just want to make sure that you understand that it took us till just this Wednesday and Friday to get every document we needed to even put our arguments together. So none of us have been having any sleep, and none of us have had any family time, and we just appreciate you giving us this opportunity. This is an ordinance. An ordinance is what the city council actually uses to define a law or make it law to go from agriculture to light industrial. And if they're not going to follow the ordinance, what good is the ordinance? And all we're asking is if you would just make them follow the substantial conformance to Exhibit A. This is Exhibit A. This is what everybody agreed to. When we bought our properties, this is what we knew was going in. And just so you know, even getting into the website to try and find our arguments on this, we found that they don't even go back past 2013. So the last couple of weeks have been painstaking work. And our community thanks you for this because we have come together. We're talking on our front porches again. We're talking in the streets. We have become a community again, and it's been a wonderful experience, even though it's been devastatingly hard. Please don't allow changing this because the trust between the community behind me and the city council will only set a precedence for future projects like turning AG to anything. Do you think that the people in the community will ever trust a compact or an agreement? Mr. Hayes told me that we're going to lose this because we don't have it in writing. What is this? This is as much writing as I've ever read in 3 weeks, or actually 2 or 3 days. This is a compact, and we're asking you, honor us, keep our trust, and vote no on number 5. Thank you.
Council, as I mentioned earlier, we did get a lot of comment cards from the folks out there. We also did receive, I believe it's a booklet of possibly online petitions. Is that what this is? The online petition? I got it from, and it's, there's a lot of signatures here. So we do have that. It's here if anybody wants to look at it. With that, council, do you have questions of any of the we'll get to the applicant. Yes, sir. We're going to get, do you have any questions of any of the neighborhood leaders that spoke, or any clarifications you would like from staff before we go to Mr. Hayes representing the applicant again?
Yeah, I got one.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, there was one good point that I hadn't heard yet in any of the emails or from inquiries about hazmat allowances for light industrial. Compared to the two plans, 2007 versus 2018, are there any differences or changes that 2018 makes to either widen and or restrict compared to 2007, or are they equivalently the same?
If I may, Mayor, Vice Mayor, the uses remain the same. So there is no change. What would be allowed under the 2007 plan would also be allowed under the proposed 2018 plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Hayes.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. Got a lot of stuff to talk about. So I will start with Councilmember Stewart, ask a question. I believe he wanted to ask of staff, but hopefully I can answer it. And it talked about the 0.32% that's in the Chandler Air Park Area Plan. That is a planning document. The ordinance is an ordinance, and the ordinance says 55%. So a planning document says this is kind of what we all kind of strive through. All of your long-range planning dockets, be it your general plan or your Air Park Area Plan or your Southeast Chandler Area Plan, are kind of guidelines, but then when an ordinance is adopted, that is what's in effect. So that's why that 55%, I assume Mr. Swanson will agree with me, but I think he shook his head yes. Couple things, Mayor, if I may. This is not heavy distribution. I have no idea what Mr. June was showing or where he got that from. I've met with Mr. June several times, both at our neighborhood meeting and at Mr. McAllister's storage facility where he has his business now. And he did not bring up any of those things that he showed this evening. I do know this. This is not heavy distribution. Heavy distribution buildings start at 400,000 square feet, but they're really more like 800,000, 1.2 million square feet. They're internal mezzanine, multi-level floors, 40-foot clear ceilings, 60-foot tall buildings. That is not what we're talking about here today. Ms. Ellsworth just said Mr. Hayes said I would lose. I never said that to Ms. Ellsworth. What I said to Ms.
Let's let him speak. You guys got to speak. We're going to let the applicant speak.
Thank you, Mayor. What I said to Ms. Ellsworth is in 2007, the applicant didn't agree to be bound by the conditions which Ryan Company is being bound by. They still had 55% lot coverage. They still had 45-foot high buildings. They did not agree to be bound by the same things that we are being bound by. So when we come to you and say, Mayor, Council, we're going to build 35% lot coverage, and you say that's what we're approving, that's what we're bound to. That was what Ms. Ellsworth took to mean I told her she was going to lose. You all know me well enough that I don't go around telling people they're going to lose. Mr. Swanson covered in the general plan. This is an employment corridor. Yes, there's residential. It's an employment corridor. We have an airport. We have a good airport that this project has helped protect. We have a wastewater treatment plant. We have a waste transfer station. We do have parks, but we have all of those things exist together. And that's what makes this city so great. I've been a resident of this city for 20 years. Used to live in the neighborhood. And I think most of you know why I moved. It wasn't because I knew this project was coming, which is what people are saying. It was because I got a divorce. That's why I moved. So I love the fact that these neighbors are hissing me, but you know, it is what it is. A couple other things I want to talk about. Councilmember-elect Orlando talked about the property rights of residents. Very true. Property rights of people who want to be the corporate citizens are very important as well. We're talking about a site plan. We're not talking about a zoning case. We're talking about a site plan. What we're trying to do is present a site plan that is better for the community than the 2007 plan. I believe Ms. Blas talked about low-rise 1 to 2 stories. That's correct. City of Chandler, as it relates to office or industrial building, a low-rise building is up to 45 foot tall. Once you go above 45 foot, you have to go to mid-rise. These are 1-story buildings. These are not out of line with what was talked about earlier. I talked about the distribution hub. Mr. June was talking a lot about use. A lot about use. And that's not what we're here to talk about. Mayor, council, I will tell you, I've been doing this a long time. As Mayor Tiptrani, I appreciate all your service to our community over the last 25 years. I'm sorry to see you go in December. And you know,
January.
Well,
January 10th.
It is end of the year. Right, January 10th. Sorry. Mayor Tiptrani, I know you have watched this city grow. I asked Jeff Kurtz because I couldn't find a document from 1986 that was the Chandler Air Park Area Plan. And I said, Jeff, what was the long-range planning for this parcel back in 1986? And he said it was the exact same thing it is today. It's the exact same thing it is today. You've heard from the person who designed Lantana Ranch, who set out the lots, who figured out how it was going to be built. And what you heard him say is they designed that neighborhood knowing there was going to be employment. You also heard him say, that he designed Appleby to take employment, light industrial uses as part of the development that was going to the north. Well, thankfully in 2007, the city council said, that doesn't make sense, let's give them a buffer. So they did. And I think what you have in front of you today is significantly better than the 2007 plan that could be done administratively that would put buildings as large as what we're proposing right on the lot line with 165 trees. That is not what's good for this community. You're talking about over a football field once you have landscape setback, building setback, over a football field away with 773 trees. And you have a developer who is willing to go walk and knock to talk to the community. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. Mayor, I don't know if you have, but I've never seen that.
But can we let him finish his speech? He didn't heckle any of our residents, and let's not heckle him. He's got a tough enough job up here.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I didn't heckle. But what I will tell you is the plan in front of you today that Ryan Companies has proposed has bigger landscape buffers, restricts the heights of the building, restricts the size of the buildings, removes the ability to have trucks closer to the residences, pushing everybody into the middle. Compared to what has happened if you vote no, which is 2007, it's not good for our community. It's not good for those 3 community groups that I talked about earlier: airport, corporate, and the residences. Mayor, that's all I have unless you have any questions.
Any questions for the applicant before he sits down? Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any questions of staff? Okay, well, the item before you, council, is the item number 5, preliminary development plan for Chandler Airport Commerce Park. You have 2 alternatives here. You can make a motion to approve, or you can make a motion to deny. If you don't have any further questions, then a motion would be in order.
I'll be the first one to talk. So I responded to quite a few emails. The last I counted was about 150 or so. There were quite a few duplicates, but I think it was about 150 individual emails that I responded to. Probably got handed around quite a few of you, but if you haven't read it, it basically comes down to, for me, this is a very difficult decision. Again, yes or no, either way, it is a gamble, unfortunately, because we've seen with the 2007 plan, there's a lot of vagueness to it. There's a lot of what ifs, there's a lot of, again, no offense, but a lot of lawyerese. That allows for interpretation and or alterations to the plan. So to me, again, it is a weight between the 2007 plan and the 2018 plan on how it's going to affect the neighbors either way. And the major items that I responded to it in the email, kind of tried to categorize them, was the zero lot plot line. How that can be used, I'd say, against the neighbors, but again, the developer is able to put buildings right up on the plot line. Whereas in the new plan, they've allowed for a larger buffer. The building height of 45 foot also allowed for the old plan, whereas they've limited the new plan. The no limit on shipping docks. Again, it was mentioned before that they could have up to 500 docks. Now they're saying that they'll have 300. The truck traffic that they've been able to redivert. So all of these, and the 55% versus 35%. So all of these, it doesn't, and I'm an engineer by trade, okay? And so to me, it's the benefit, the unintended consequences of every decision that we make up here. And I'll be honest with you, after listing them off, it didn't really make me feel any better on, or help me decide on my decision. Because I do know that you, the citizens out there, don't want anything going on here within reason. Again, you don't want light industrial. Many of the emails said, vote no on the zoning case, or vote no so that there's no trucks, which doesn't, again, isn't accurate. There can be trucks. Vote no so that there's no distribution warehousing. A vote of no does not. So to me, it becomes a vote of no, of gambling on what Ryan Companies or any other company that could come forward to do and develop on that land versus some of the agreements and the concessions that Ryan has made. I've talked with a lot of citizens out there. I've talked with my own family, talked with my kids who don't have any clue what I'm talking about the zero lot line. And they just, yeah, whatever, Dad. But I mean, I had to vent this. I had to hear what it was going to be. Okay, what it was going to sound like if I said yes, what it was going to sound like if I said no. And to me, I do like gambling, but not with the taxpayers' money, not with the neighbors' land, not with what's going to be possibly proposed for the 2007, or what could come in the 2007 plan, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of rambling now. But to me, it was a gamble. It is a gamble if we say no, because of the unknowns and the amount of changes that could be made in the 2007 plan. The 2018 plan, for lack of a better word, puts more handcuffs and restrictions into the development. And I see that as more of a sure bet than a gamble on the old plan. So I will be moving for the approval of the preliminary development plan, PDP 18-003, PLT 18-0023, the Chandler Airport Commerce Park, CACP, for site layout and building architecture for an office industrial warehouse development of approximately 78 acres located south of the southeast corner of McQueen and Queen Creek Roads.
I'd like to take a moment and add a little bit. I will tell you, I'm the new guy in the block here. And,
hold on one second. We got a motion. The next step would either to get a second or not get a second. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Lopez for approval. We have a motion by Vice Mayor Lopez for approval. Motion fails.
I will second it.
Okay.
So that said, let me say, for me, the decision is difficult.
Council member, just let me,
Okay.
right now we have a motion by Vice Mayor Lopez, a second by Councilmember McClymans. Let him talk, let the rest of the council talk. We've had a long evening.
For me, the decision was difficult, knowing the outcome. No matter what the outcome was, somebody's going to walk away unhappy. With this decision, I've spent countless hours doing my due diligence. I've read every document on the current 2007 PDP and the 2018 PDP. I've met with fellow community neighbors, affected homeowners. I've read hundreds of emails. I've read several Facebook posts and comments on Living Chandler, Ocotillo Friends, on a specific Facebook page for this, the change.org petition. I've also taken time to visit the property myself to get a feel for the best use. I've met with the developers and the representatives, met with the landowners and the representatives, and finally I've consulted with city manager, planning and development, and our city attorney. We are here today to decide which PDP is the better plan. Is it the current 2007 PDP or the proposed 2018 PDP? I must weigh the decisions of both to ultimately determine which of the two plans is the better plan, and that's really what we're deciding. Voting no is saying the current 2007 PDP is a better plan for the community and neighbors. Voting no also does not change the zoning and does not stop the developer from building under the current 2007 PDP. A no vote will allow Ryan companies to develop a light industrial complex, not to include the 7 to 12 that are placed along, 7 to 12 lots that are placed along Queen Road. Renee hit on most of it, but they can do it with the 0 lot line, 45-foot height, 1.5 million approximate square foot facility and buildings. They can do it with 500 plus shipping docks. And there's no limit on truck traffic. Additionally, a no vote in the event Ryan Company decides to not develop could open the city up for legal liability for not allowing the land to develop under its entitled use. Conversely, a yes vote would allow Ryan Companies to develop a light industrial complex to include plots 7 to 12 that are placed along Ryan Road. And just to rehash, with setbacks, additional investment in trees, screening walls, they've reduced the building heights. They're reducing the amount of lot coverage to about 1.2 million square foot facility. They were at 347, now they're at 297. And they're gonna limit truck traffic to a center entrance. So here's the thing. Based on my information I've been provided this evening, my hands are tied from a legal perspective. I feel from the homeowners and I understand their plight, but faced with only two options, the best of the two plans is the proposed 2018 PDP.
Why did it take you so long to second the emotion?
Well, I wanted to speak my mind.
Okay, he doesn't have to respond to that. Are you done?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Council, you have a motion and a second for approval of the case. Do any of you have any comments before we vote?
Mayor,
Council,
can I interject? Can I just make sure that that motion and second included the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission and planning staff?
Yes.
and the second is that
A second. Sorry.
Just want to
Councilmember Wong.
just want to make a comment. To my knowledge, a second doesn't mean yes. A second just to make a motion to become to be able to be discussed and voted on. Okay, I'm not going to assume what Council Member McClymans will vote will be. Just a comment. Yeah.
Mayor.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I sat here and took all this information, and I wish I was, this is a horrible forum to sort of lay everything out. It's a great forum to shine light on things. Councilmember McClymans is 100% right, and I'm going to say this because careful what you wish for on this, because I don't know that everybody has all of the information that we may have up here or that staff has delivered to us. Nonetheless, we live in a constitutional republic and we elect leaders, not leaders, we elect public servants to represent us, to the municipality that serves our as a customer service agent to make sure that our city is run well. So I wanted to share that because he's 100% right that, and I'm going to ask staff a question when the meeting's over, but somebody could come in and buy this as is, put all the lots together, and build exactly what you're fearful of being built. This is a lower scale project that you are here as a group with emotions, because we're heckling, there's emotions being shared. And I don't know that the pragmatism is coming out or the logic is coming out 100%. That said, that's all I'm going to say. We can keep moving forward.
Councilmember Wong.
I'm a little bit confused about what Councilmember Stewart's comment. If we disapprove, that means it comes back to the old design, right? That doesn't mean they can still build what they propose today. That's why I understand.
Eric, do you have a minute? And this is what I was hoping would get out from your visits to the neighborhoods. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were asking me a question. I apologize.
Yeah. No, it's okay. And also, and also, if the council is powerless on this, then why the state bring this to us to vote? That means our votes mean something.
Through the mayor, council members Wong and Councilmember Stewart, from a review standpoint, there is some correction that Ryan can come in. What the issue is, their current design encroaches into lots 7 through 12 out along McQueen Road. You take that out of the equation, and we have, based on the 2007 approval, the administrative ability to approve a site plan. The design team came up and showed a plan. It was black and white that showed lot allocation and combining to give the square footages of what they could do using the existing plan in place to increase building sizes. That is something that can be done administratively. What's in front of the council is because the combination and encroachment of those buildings into lots 7 through 12 dictates that they come back through the PDP process. And that's really what triggered coming back to council. So if they take that frontage out of the equation, then it can be reviewed administratively per the 2007 approval.
Thank you. Any further comments from the council? Council, just a comment. I don't usually explain my vote, but I think I will tonight. My compliments to Ryan Company for working on a plan, but I have a lot of citizens here that are very concerned with that plan. And I do disagree with the city attorney. We don't have to, we're here to vote on a plan for it or against it. We don't have to vote for it. We don't have to vote against it. So let's be clear, there are options up here. I've been on the council a long time, and I have to say, this is right up there. It's kind of like the old days when we were doing a whole lot of zoning, and there was a lot of neighborhood input and what have you. So I hear what you're coming from. I drive that area every day, twice a day. I use the Paseo for my biking. The Paseo is very good for me, especially with my bad knee. I don't get to run anymore. I got a bike. And so, but you neighbors are my constituents, and I built my career on supporting my constituents. And so I intend to vote that way this evening. I'm going to support my constituents, the overwhelming amount of his constituents. It's not even close. So I will be voting no on this case. Councilmember Wong.
You will see how I will vote, but this is what I think. Well, let's table it. Let's move it to next time. Now, okay. this is why I want to say, if we disapprove it, that doesn't mean it's end of it. Lawyer company can always make another proposal. It's not a death sentence. It's not a death sentence. If you are able to convince the residents, then you bring it to the council, you will make a very strong case. And so I think you already know what I will going to vote for, vote. So I just want to tell you, if the result is not in your favor, it's not a death sentence. But what got to me is I need to listen to the people. I need to listen to who voted me out. And yeah, so, yeah.
Any other comments before we vote? Councilmember Hartkey.
Thank you, Mayor. Boy, this is a tough vote up here. As I see the merits. I listen to the neighbors. I honestly don't believe that the worst case scenarios that many of you are fearful are going to happen. I just don't, I'm sorry. But at the same time, I also believe that you should have a say, not as a NIMBY, not in my neighborhood, but you should have a say in what happens next to you. And it's, for that reason, I'm also going to be voting no.
Councilmember Rowe.
Well, I guess we're all going to talk. I've never seen anything like this. And if there's one thing that I have said, and I've said it to staff, I've said it to developers, I've said it to attorneys, I've said it to people in the community, whenever possible, don't bring your fight to this room. And so I think that there's been a tremendous amount of work done on behalf of both sides of this issue. I have a great deal of respect for the Ryan Company folks. We've talked to them, we've met with them. They are great people. They have a lot of time invested in this and a lot of money. And to the fine citizens, my constituents, sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for because you might get it. But I will tell you, I've spent a great deal of time. I've talked to some of you folks, I've taken phone calls, I've read emails, I've had a 50-foot tape measure on my street, measuring towards the closest street to see what that's like to be 100 yards from my house. So a great deal of time has been spent by all of us. And so my vote will be something that I've taken with a lot of thought and with a lot of consideration.
Any others? Okay, council, the motion before you is a motion to approve. Council, please vote. Item 6 is null and void. Council will do current events on Thursday, and with that, we adjourn the meeting.